Well, hello and welcome back to the radio room. We're looking at the FT990 again. Previous video, done a little diagnostics on it. Looked at several things that had been, some known problems. A diode that was in the receive path on the RF board, and just a couple of components like that, which this radio does not have. There's actually an updated mod that Yaesu did in a little bit later production radios where they replace that diode with a capacitor, and this radio has that. We left off in the previous video discussing a diode that was on the low pass filter board, which I said didn't seem like it was reading like a diode, and I'll show you on the diagram which one I'm talking about. So it was right here. It was D6007, and I said that didn't look. It kind of looked like a funny diode. It didn't really act like a diode. When I measured any continuity through it, it was just open both ways. So I was like, well, maybe that's a problem, but I couldn't really see how. I mean, you can see it's just paralleled with the signal. It literally comes from the antenna. The signal literally comes in from the antenna, goes through the receive transmit relay, and right back out to RX, which then moves over to the RF board, just with a coaxial jumper. And I was like, well, there's no way, unless this was shorted, could I see it even dropping down the signal. Turns out that is a I'm not really sure if I don't think it's actually a diode, or not something that I would call a diode. It should read open, forward or reverse. The thing, I pulled a data sheet on it, kind of glanced at it real quick. I don't even think the word diode is even used on the data sheet. It's called a surge suppressor. I believe this one's like 100-volt surge suppressor. The basic thing it does is that if the voltage increases high enough that it'll conduct, it just shunts all that voltage to ground. So it should read open. You could take the in all practical purposes, unless you had a surge, which it does protect for that. It suppresses that. You could take the thing out of there. The radio wouldn't know the difference. The only time the radio would know the difference is if you had some really big pulse or signal that came in that exceeded the threshold of that surge suppressor. If you didn't have it in there, you'd probably knock out the front end of the radio. Other than that, it just sits there waiting for it to do its job. So it's not that. After I'd gotten a little bit of a chance to sit down with the radio, of course I was wanting to work on this last week to kind of see if where we were getting, and do a little diagnostics and maybe get another video. I unfortunately couldn't do that. We were stuck in the middle of a major dust storm last weekend. Extremely low visibility type conditions outside. Power lines going down all over the place, trees snapping all over the place, signs flying through the air. It was a wild weekend. So I didn't get much chance to come out here and make a video. Mostly because I did not trust to turn the computer on, start recording, and then have a power outage. So hopefully we're done with the power outages for a while, and hopefully we're done with 80 plus mile an hour wind gusts and sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. But I did get a chance to come back out here and make this video, and of course in the meantime I'd had a little chance. Even though I wasn't videoing it, I still wanted to continue some work on the radio. We did not find that common problem with the diode on the RF board. The surge suppressor is not the problem. So I started tracing through the receive path on the RF board, and of course after we go over to the RF board, we go through a little. It looks like probably a little bit of filtering, maybe some low pass filtering or high pass filtering. I'm not sure. Going through those diodes and whatnot, and then it goes into a band pass filter. And I thought, well, okay, maybe the band pass filter is faulty, and we're not getting proper switching through the band pass filter. Let me see if I can find that real quick for you, and I'll kind of show you what we have on as far as the low pass filter. Let me find the RF board real quick here. Okay, so this is the RF board. See right here, RF unit. Okay, this area starting from right here and coming all the way down to here is the band pass filter, and you can see if I can get this to do this. You can see, depending on which band you're on, is where which segment of this is activated. So say like you're if you're on 40 meters, right in here is going to be your 40 meter band pass, and basically everything else isn't being used. And of course it's controlled off of this integrated circuit right here and through this IC right here. It basically selects which one. Well, in looking further through this, not only does the receive come through here, but it seems like the transmit, I believe, does too. So, and I tested the transmit; it worked fine. It didn't act like it wasn't being, attenuated any by the circuitry. The radio has full 100 watt output. On all the modes that you'd have 100 watt output on. I mean, carrier on AM is right where it's supposed to be. Everything's right where it's supposed to be. So I kind of narrowed this down. I did check some of the diodes coming into this, so let me show you kind of the path here. So we come in, this is coming from the low pass filter board where it said RX out. There's a coaxial jumper that runs to here. Once you come over here, this is the attenuator. Basically all it does is, so there's two paths here that you can kind of see. When you're not attenuated, the signal comes in here, goes through this relay and then straight into this circuitry. If you turn the attenuator on, it's forced, since this center contact right here moves over to this side. So basically what it does is, since it can't go through here, it's forced to go through this resistor, which is also paralleled with this resistor now, since this contact is now over here. So this is the attenuator. I did check the attenuator. It seems to work just fine. Of course, comes through here, goes through this transformer, and then all the receive basically comes over here and through the bandpass filter. Once it goes through the bandpass filter, it goes to this transformer, which takes it over to the RF amp area right here. This is basically the RF amp, Q1009 and 1010, so 1010. Initially I thought maybe we had a problem right here, but since I was getting this far into the radio, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, this radio has card sockets in it. I think I can kind of get this visible here. I got the radio sitting at an odd angle on the bench right now. So these are all cards. You can undo the screw on each end and lift these boards out. I mean, there's nothing to unsolder to remove a board on this radio. You just have to undo some of these jumpers that are just into sockets on the board. I decided I'm going to pull all of the boards out. And I did it one at a time. pull all the boards out and clean the card sockets down inside there and clean the connecting corresponding socket that's on the board. Went through and cleaned all of those. Also cleaned all the jumpers that all these gray jumpers plug into on the boards, and then put it back together. After I did that, I decided, okay, I'm going to do some more testing. And it seemed like the radio had a little bit more life to it. Then I took my, I'd like to say, trusty Tiny SA and put a signal into the radio, and I still couldn't hardly hear my Tiny SA through the radio. But it seemed like the radio was behaving differently after I cleaned those. Well, it turns out I fought for several hours trying to figure out what was going on with this thing, because I kept putting a S9 signal into the radio and it wouldn't even move the needle. Well, it turns out I had another radio come into the radio room that had a receive problem as well. Well, I wanted to see if there was something going on with that one. The owner didn't know if it was the radio or if he had maybe it was an antenna problem. It's a VHF UHF radio. He wanted to find, has he got an antenna problem? It's just he doesn't have good receive on his antenna. Is it the radio, coax, whatever? Well, the easiest way to check that, I figured, was, well, let's just hook up the Tiny SA to the radio and check the 2 meter side, which appeared to be down, and see what it has for an S9 signal. I mean, if we put an S9 signal in it, it shows S9. It's probably okay. Well, I hooked up the Tiny SA to it and couldn't hear it on that radio. And so I turned up the output on the Tiny SA a little bit, got to about the same point where I'd start hearing the tone, had just an FM modulated tone coming out, and the signal level to start hearing it, surprisingly, at the moment, was the same level that I would start to hear something on this. Well, in my mind, odds are 2 radios having exactly the same amount of deafness didn't make sense. I started suspecting my Tiny SA. At that point, I actually hooked it up to another HF radio, which I know has good receive. And guess what? Couldn't hardly hear it, and an S9 signal on that. So the Tiny SA has gone to the great workbench in the sky. Rest in peace, Tiny SA. I guess I've just used it enough. So I got another one on order. I actually got an upgraded one. I'm going to get the Tiny SA Ultra Plus. So that brings me back to this radio. Decided, you know what? The heck with it. I'm just going to make sure all the boards are in good. Slap an antenna on this thing. See if I can hear anything. Sure enough, put an antenna on it, and I started hearing signals. After that, I called up another operator and said, hey, let's do a little testing. So I hooked this radio up to the same antenna system. I have a switch so I can switch between 2 radios. Had this one going and had another radio with a known good receiver on it on the same frequency. Started talking to that other operator on this radio, noted his signal level, say S7, immediately flipped over to the other radio and still had S7. So this radio and the known good one have the same signal levels. Went to WWV, same signal levels according to the S meters on both, and sounded the same as far as signal strength. So what was wrong with this radio? I think it had some dirty contacts on either a card socket or one of the little jumpers in there. So not an exciting diagnostic and repair video this time. but I didn't want to leave you all hanging about the FT990. It works. Let's see if we can hear something. So we do have better static now. You can actually hear a little bit more static when you turn this down so you're not getting too loud. Let's just tune around and see if we can find something.
I got you in there. I love the 5.9 both ways. If you can, put us in QRZ. That's the only way it confirms for me.
So the radio is definitely working now. It's just on 20 meters. That's what the antenna system's tuned to right now.
Over to continue 7-3 and 9 SAO clearance. Hi, Victorio, dale pa Pietro. Coming back, I gotta get.
So basically, what I think it boiled down to is there wasn't really anything wrong with the radio beyond the fact that I think during the time this radio was sitting, I think the owner had said that he had it kind of out of the way, out of service for about a year. When he came back, it was dead. I mean, I talked to him earlier today on the phone, and he said when he turned it on, he turned up the volume all the way up and could barely hear anything coming out of the speakers. So I think we're back in business here. It just needed some cleaning. And one thing I will note is that when I was changing or pulling some of these little gray jumpers out, these gray jumpers, I was unhooking them. The ends of them were very dark, which is common. I mean, they're basically just copper ends on there, and they do tarnish. But even when I pulled them out, normally you have a lot of dark where the two pieces of metal aren't touching. So you basically got like a socket, and it slides in there coaxially. There's a center pin that goes straight down into a hole, and then there's a bigger area that slides in there. So they looked even dark where they're normally mated together, and normally they're kind of, I mean, the metal is touching metal. It doesn't get a lot of oxidation in there. So you basically have a dark socket and a dark connector, and when you pull it out, you can see shiny. Some of these, they were probably a little dark even on the inside. So I did use some deoxit on them, clean them up, kind of inserted them into the socket, pulled them out a couple of times, gently twisted them around. So I'm thinking maybe that could have something to do with it, or maybe even one of the card sockets was a bit tarnished or dirty. But we got received back, so I think we're probably in pretty good shape on this radio now. And that sounds like, I think that might have been Honduras right there. So the radio's working. I just want to give you all an update. Didn't really do much to it besides take, a good half of the radio apart, clean it, and put it back together. But I think that's all it needed. This is a nice radio. So that's the deal. Not a whole lot of technical stuff on this one. No really diving in or trying to really figure stuff out. I cleaned it up because decided that was a good step, put it back together, and the thing works. So I'm really thinking that's where our problem was. We'll get it buttoned back up and wipe it down real good and get it back to its owner. So there's the update. Thanks for stopping by the radio room. We'll see you later.